In studio with us is Patrick Analo, Chief Officer, Urban Development and Planning, Nairobi City. And we just shall be having a discussion around protecting construction developers now, the challenges and the role of key regulators over the same. Karibu sana, Patrick.
Thank you so much.
Discussion and City Kinshasa.
Yes, brother from Migori.
Kinshasa. Say it several times, really quick. 1, 2, 3, go. No, it's fine.
Yeah, Kinshasa. But it is allowed, yeah?
It is allowed.
Now, City as well now. Patrick Analo would want to know what the proverb of the week is.
Yes, Patrick, thank you for coming. Patrick has been with us before, and he's always welcome because he gives us an opportunity to actually understand how this wonderful and grand county of Nairobi works. Okay? Janet, feel free to ask him all those questions you've wanted to ask and you've never had anybody to ask.
This is the moment.
This is your moment. Take advantage. And he's sitting next to you.
Yeah.
Take advantage of it fully.
I will.
And let's remind him that is the hot seat.
This is the hot seat of the Situation Room. But he is equal to the task. The proverb from the Republic of Angola. A real journey begins in old age. That's a proverb. I'd like you to tell me your take on it.
The real journey begins
in old age.
Yes. One interpretation is that experience matters. I think as you grow old, you gain more experience, and so basically you get to do things better.
City. Old age.
Yes.
Better.
Well, as somebody who is not in his first youth, I will tell you this. The one thing that I have found as I've gotten older is I still make mistakes. Yes. But I bounce back a lot easier because I accept my mistakes. I'm able to look and say, yes, I made a mistake, and I'm even able to state that I've made a mistake. And I'm also able to ask for forgiveness where I've wronged, where previously I would not. Certain things would not escape my mouth. But now I can. Yes.
Now, Patrick.
Yes.
The construction industry in these countries continues to face a myriad of challenges, from what you'd say, taxes involved, the entire process into the construction industry. And it is through that a lot of people have cut corners just so they can put up their buildings. You know, you go to some areas in this Nairobi as we speak right now, an apartment above 5 floors should have an elevator, but some have 8. No elevator. So as we talk about protecting construction developers in this country, what is the challenge in all these developers just making sure that they do it right as expected as per the law and the rules of Nairobi?
Yeah, thank you so much. I think for me to really put this into context, allow me to share with you some statistics. Yeah, the Architectural Association of Kenya, which is a body, comprising of architects and other professionals within the built environment, released their report last week concerning the state of construction industry in our country. And particularly for Nairobi, the report indicated, which is factual, we had approvals of 1,761 buildings to be constructed within Nairobi. Worth the investment cost is worth 272 billion Kenya shillings, and revenue generated to the county of Nairobi is 1.6 billion. In terms of opportunities, these buildings are going to create employment to about 3 million people within this city, not to mention the cost of material for construction and other commodities. But here we are just talking about buildings which have been submitted, processed and approved in accordance with the laid down laws. But as you mentioned, we also have structures outside there which have been implemented without necessary approvals, and particularly this is in the areas of the city that are informal, where there are no title deeds. The eastlands part of the city, like a section of Tasia, which is an NSSF land, which was invaded in 1992. Up to now, NSSF has not completed, the process of formalizing the ownership of that land. So So there are two levels of complaints in terms of developers who feel, they are either harassed or the fees and charges are high. Talking about the fees and charges, I think this is something that happens every year. The fees are reviewed as part of the finance bill, and I think this is something Governor Sakaja did. Nairobi City County has only had one gazetted finance bill since 2013 when we became a county government. The second one is the 2023 finance bill. Basically, a finance bill is a rigorous process. I'm sure we now have a history of what happened earlier this year in our country. It's a very rigorous process in terms of public participation. And this is something we tried to do, and we reviewed our fees and charges in terms of construction. But it was a very participatory process. Mm-hmm. But now the other issue is infiltration of construction sites by criminals who extort the developers. And in most cases, this happens where developers have not obtained all necessary documents. So you're not so sure of yourself or what you are doing. And then if somebody gets to know, because sometimes these guys collude with the site laborers, wanamwambia, boss anaile. So that's how criminals get in terms of infiltration. I was just speaking much earlier to your sister station about what are we doing as a county government. February next year, we are rolling out a digital staff identification card system that is going to be scannable from the QR code on your phone. If somebody visits your construction site and they say that they're from whatever department of the county government of Nairobi, you should be able to check their details from your phone. But that alone will not, address the issue of ease of doing business, because construction sites are also visited by national government agencies. We have the National Environmental Management Authority, the National Construction Authority, we have Water Regulatory Authority, among others. What we have proposed as the City County of Nairobi is a one-stop kind of like a platform. So that these agencies, if they need to do site inspections, let's say in Westlands, we agree together that we'll be going to Westlands, and let's go to a station at once. If you are visiting city's property, let city, see one team. This one will check lighting. The other guy will check, a sewer connection. Instead of having people Monday to Friday. Some people even tell us that they even get tired of receiving guests from government. This one comes and he says, I've come to check whether the place is fumigated against pests. The other one comes to check access. So that's what we are doing in city and Janet, I think you want to.
Yeah, I just want to ask you, because you've mentioned several critical points. You've talked about infiltration of criminals. I think Dennis had started by asking, I don't know whether you asked about congestion. Maybe it's my mind that went to the congestion of the cities. But the point is, there's been sort of like an exponential issues that have arisen, whether it's the several storied buildings that are not inspected and that have many times sort of like crumbled down. Whatever drainage system, it just seems like the planning is, in many ways, it seems unsupervised. And then you've talked about these other few elements of infiltration. So who is dropping the ball where? Because it just seems like a lot of different gaps widening over time simultaneously. And obviously the fear is that will continue to escalate. That even though you've talked about this critical sort of like digital system, there just seems to be a widening of several gaps that are affected. So let's go back to where that could have started happening and how somebody or a few people saw that and then continued to widen these gaps. Who is dropping the ball?
Yeah, so I think if I respond to that a little bit in a more comprehensive way, the city's construction sector has, tremendously evolved over the last 20 years, I would say, since the advent of, devolved system of government. Why am I saying that? Initially, if you recall, most of the constructions that were taking place in our city were being, facilitated by indigenous contractors, whose capacity in terms of modern investment was limited. And mostly there were Asian contractors or the indigenous Kenyans. But from 2013, we saw the entry of foreign investments in our city, with the heavy machinery and equipment. And this brought itself as an opportunity, but also as a challenge in terms of regulating the industry, because you're now going high, you're going down, you have this heavy machinery. How do you regulate? And that's how the National Construction Authority was brought in. Their work is to register contractors in terms of their qualifications, their competence. They also register staff, staff personnel. In terms of artisan, the laborers, the engineers, we must make sure that they have the right qualifications. Then they also register projects. The National Environment Management Authority comes in terms of environmental issues, the management of wastewater at the site. Because sometimes when you hit the basement rock, you come across water. How do you dispose the waste soils and so on and so forth? The county's responsibility is mainly to approve. Mm-hmm. But what you are saying is that with all these players at a single construction site, there's still a lot of movement in terms of roles and duties and responsibilities. So that is not something that can be regulated in law. It requires administrative intervention. And that's what we are saying in the city of Nairobi from February. We are coming up with a single approach in terms of supervision of construction sites. Dennis has raised the issue of lifts. The building code, indeed, of 1968, which has now been repealed to 2024 building code, require that any building that is beyond from fifth floor, we must have lifts installed. We have now repealed that building code. We have a new building code that requires now, when structural engineering drawings are submitted, these are compulsory provisions and requirements that lifts must be installed in order for one to be allowed to proceed in terms of construction, to be cleared to move to the fifth floor. And that's why when you go to some construction sites now, you find they've even installed operational lifts for transporting of materials and stuff. This is to pilot the requirement to provide for more lifts above there. Janet has raised the issue of congestion. Of course, the city is growing. That's a discussion we've had here with city. The city is growing, and we must guide the city in terms of urban planning and development. We've had a challenge in terms of legal framework, Janet. Our zoning policy expired, or rather lapsed, in 2006. Between then and 2013, we came up with a Nairobi Integrated Development Urban Master Plan, which required then we have to formulate other sub-district or other low cadre plans. That is an effort that the county government tried to do in terms of during NMS period. It failed. This administration floated a development control bill at the County Assembly of Nairobi. A section of citizens of the city came out and said that the policy is not addressing the infrastructure issue city. I know you want to ask me where have we moved after that. And I'm here.
That's not what I want to ask you.
I'm here. I know. I always know how to read your face. I'm here to report city, because last time I was here, this was a very hot question.
Yes,
city, by the mercies of God, who had seen how we had really struggled to have an up to modern framework. We got funding from the U.S. Congress through a program called Millennium Challenge Corporation, up to a tune of $60 billion in January.
60 what?
60 billion.
60 billion. Yes.
60
billion Kenya shillings. Yeah, yes, Kenya shillings.
Kenya shillings?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. You can get that on the
Kenya shillings.
You wanted to join the county
No. I did though want to ask about the accountability process. Sorry if I interrupted.
I'll come to that. So that money is going to help us do 3 programs. One, which you've already started, and January there will be a tender out to invite international consultancy for preparation of a citywide development control regulatory framework for the city of Nairobi, for the 20 zones.
We need outsiders to come and tell us this.
Well, this is money that has come from the US.
Is it tied to them bringing in their...
No. It's the tender is opened so that city you can apply, somebody from Kigali can apply, somebody from the east can apply. You can form a consortium. Of course, there will be requirements that you must. There are certain elements that you must have a local representation. Yeah, but it's an international tender, which I think for us is also good, so that we can draw competences in respective areas. And remember, it is also the second program within that funding is the GIS, because for you to have an ideal framework for management of development, it must be supported by an IT system. And so we'll be doing a GIS. The process of formulating terms of reference is currently underway. But for the development control policy, we finished the terms of reference. January, the consultants will be out. I think by around March, we should have started. That one is going to address the issues that residents of Kilimani had raised, which led to halting of the development control policy that we have submitted at the county assembly. The third program out of that funding is a commuter rail transport modernization plan for Makadara and Dandora. Some of the issues you've raised is the challenge of public transport. We cannot depend on the current model of transportation within the city of Nairobi, where you have the main means of transport is public as matatus, and it's privately owned. Government has no role in it. Look at the expressway. It's barely 3 years since it was completed and launched. It started experiencing congestion. And this is based on studies. Every new road you launch, about 5 years within the period of operationalization, it is congestion. Because once you do a new road, it alters the way people think and people relocate. And then within 5 years, so the most sustainable way of managing transport in this city is mass rapid transit, and that has to be an electric train. So that's the program that we'll be doing in Makadara and Dandora. Janet has asked about accountability. That money is signed between the government of Kenya and the U.S. government. There's a unit at the National Treasury called Kenya Millennium Development Fund, Program Management Unit. The funds will be transferred through that unit. The county government, which is a recipient of the funding, will only supervise the process. But appropriation and accountability will be done through the Treasury. And I think that's how the program was designed, and it was signed by His Excellency the President and the Governor. We are very happy to have that arrangement so that we can focus on the critical issues of doing the three policies.
All right, Patrick. And we are discussing matters to do with protecting construction developers and the challenges and role of key regulators. Now, Patrick, before we went on break, City wanted to ask you a question. City?
It's not one question.
Several.
Yes.
You can ask a few now.
Let me start with the first one. If indeed whatever ordinances we had lapsed, so what exactly have we been using as a yardstick for the development that we see? And as you correctly put it, some individuals, some of them in this room who live in Kilimani, had those problems where you wake up one morning and you have neighbors who are living in the sky, and they keep throwing things into your garden simply because it's like they figure the balcony overlooks this other place, so you might as well just chuck it there. How have we been determining what to build, where to build it, how to build it?
Yeah, I think City have responded to that question much earlier. And I want to combine it with what Dennis asked about the state of planning within the city of Nairobi. I like breaking down the state of planning within the city of Nairobi into about three tiers. There's the planning of the city before 1963. That's what the colonial period. I will not go into that. But basically, at that time, the focus of the planning of the city was on the white settled areas of the city, the Westlands district, the Karen district, the Kilimani district, and the Eastlands part of the city was ignored in terms of infrastructure and master planning for land use. Then there's a period after 1963 to date. 1963 to 1992. 1963 to 1992, planning within the city of Nairobi was being done by central government under the Ministry of Local Government and Kanu administration. One would say that planning was mainly centralized. The decisions would be made by the executive, the national executive, and the local authorities' role was mainly to implement. I think we started having challenges from 1992, especially disorder. Dennis. It is from 1992 that the proliferation of slums and informal settlements it started being experienced because government literally abdicated its responsibility in terms of housing provision. Of course, this partly was contributed by the structural adjustment programs by the IMF on the Kenyan government then, and they told the government that you have no business in urban housing, leave it to the private sector.
You also have no business in owning houses.
You also have no business owning houses, leave it to the private sector. And so, the many people who used to depend on government houses for housing started resorting to living in slums. And that's why you had Kibera grow beyond the original Nubian population which had to settle there. That's how we lost Nairobi Dam. Apparently, there was a sailors' club there.
Yes.
This went on, and I think it's part of the push for a new constitution that counties planning to be devolved, certain government services to be pushed to local level in terms of planning. So then we have what happened from 2010 to date. That's another phase of planning. I said that in 2014, we completed Nairobi Integrated Urban Development Master Plan, which in it has 3 principles. One, it talks about the need to develop local district plans, and that would now be one of the plans for Kilimani, Kileleshwa, Karen, Langata, but also Eastland's part of the city, the Embakasis. That was not done because of budgetary constraints. The process would be, initiated by the technical wing of the county government, and when it goes to the county assembly, there will be no requisite budget allocation. But the most recent significant effort to try and create that those 5 plans was during the NMS period, when they floated about 5 proposals, city, for preparation of plans to guide localized decisions in terms of development control. The process went up to award of tenders, but we all know what happened after the elections. NMS was phased out, and that's how that collapsed. Now enter the Governor Sakaja's administration, which we are in now. I've reported here that we've started a new process, which in January, February will be going public in terms of inviting contractors to complete a new plan for the city of Nairobi. Back to your question, what has been guiding decisions? I think I'm on record having told you here that in 2013, when the administration of the late President Kibaki took over, there was a growth in terms of the middle income.
2013, they were exiting.
Yeah, 2002 years. Yes. There was a growth in terms of the middle class population for the city of Nairobi because the economy grew. That led to demand in terms of increase in housing for provision for the middle income. There was an executive order by the Minister of Local Government then that county government of... No, I think that was Muskari Kombo. That is the first Minister of Local Government. If not Muskari Kombo, Karisa Maitha. I had not joined the city county government.
In 2002?
Yes.
That was Karisa Maitha.
Yeah. Actually, factually, it is him who gave that. Yeah, yes. And the focus was on areas. You see, now that directive could only be applied on areas where government had a mass ownership of land, and
he could do that because he had executive authority.
Yeah, executive authority yes. In terms of planning. So he allowed for densification of Kilimani and Kileleshwa, and that's how the floors were raised without a requisite zoning policy. Because ideally, a zoning policy would have been prepared first, and then now you can be able to, to go vertical. but exercising the executive powers vested upon him. And city, I'm sure you're already in town around that time. You knew which kind of minister Mr. Karisa Maitha, the late Karisa Maitha was. He allowed the stickers.
He was nicknamed the Hurricane.
Yeah. So Janet, so that's how we started having those high levels in Kilimani, and mainly it was on discretion by the planning department then and the PS local government. It was also based on project rationalization. Dennis, if you're an architect, you come and say you have half an acre, you think this can be done. So the technical people would look at all the necessary provisions in terms of evaluation of architectural drawings and grant, but there was no provision in terms of zoning policy. And that has gone on until presently, when you have this clamor that we cannot continue this way. We must have infrastructure in place. We must cap these things to a certain level, and that's the effort that you are trying to put in place in terms of preparing the new development control policy.
There's something I'd like you to explain, because this is something you understand well. When you plan and you have zoning policies, what is considered? Because as you say correctly, if you look at the various phases, in all the major towns, we had those phases. You live in a certain place, even the acreage that you're allowed to have is this. And the smallest component of it is this. What is it that forms, what are the principles that form these processes?
So thank you so much, City, for that question. And I was in court about 3 weeks ago. I had been invited in court as an expert to shed some light on what is a zoning policy, because the High Court High Court is deliberating on a certain matter that is touching on densities, and they wanted to know what is a zoning policy. So one of the things about a zoning policy is it caps or it defines the levels in terms of height, but it also goes further and defines the minimum land holding. And that's where the catch might also come in, especially for those who are clamoring for height. But now, at that intersection between the land size, Dennis, and the height is the cost of investment. Because the currently half an acre of land in Kilimani goes for about 600 million Kenyan shillings. So the calculations in terms of investment, and I'm not saying that this is what informs a zoning policy, but it's some of the considerations you have to put in place in order to direct investment in a city. So it also looks at the land uses. You remember one of the things we've been fighting with is bus and clubs and those other things which people of the age of city sometimes visit to go and be stretched their bodies. The zoning policy also, I'm saying gymnastic.
I was like, stretch their body. Is that a metaphor for something? But okay,
I was talking about a gym.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
So Janet, so it defines all that. It defines also like where do you locate kindergartens, places of worship in terms of mosques or temples and so on and so forth. So that's what our zoning policy is briefly.
Meaning, you're looking at the built-up area and you're looking at a population essentially.
Exactly.
And with the population comes certain amenities.
Yes.
Now, so in the absence of a zoning policy, these amenities just pop up as and when, and again, it's discretionary.
Yes.
That's what it has been.
Yeah.
So the word discretionary, in many ways, then led to what is spelled MESS, because
mess.
Yes, exactly.
Because not necessarily. I think the other thing which I need to also enlighten you as a profession in the built environment, zoning policy is implemented. Even if you have a zoning policy today, you cannot implement it without arrangement of other laws. City. It exists within the other laws. And you remember I talked to you about the various players that the developers are complaining are visiting sites, one after the other. So you implement a zoning policy against a backdrop of other government policies. If it's an amenity, for example, a school, there's a policy on educational facilities. You cannot just create, let's say, a school if you do not have requisite provisions for that kind of like facility. So a zoning policy has to sit within a group of other laws city.
All right, Patrick. Let me just shoot.
But I think also before I go out of that, again, there have been critics of zoning policy. Dennis.
Yeah.
Let me give you an example.
That they understand it, or
let me give you an example. Let me give you an example of what I mean. As a city grows, let me give you an example of a city of Tokyo. You might have not been there, but you can check on the internet. Zoning policy thrives well in cities where you have, or in societies where you have vast areas of land, and so you have regions like between Nairobi and the next region. It's vast land. So you can actually say that, let's say this is an industrial city. So most of the developments you find there are supporting that kind of arrangement. But our city, for example, the city of Nairobi, it has become so heterogeneous. Even in Kilimani, for example, let me say, Janet, Kilimani is being traversed by heavily, occupied in terms of heavy traffic. Look at Ngong Road. Look at the ring road, Kilimani. Look at even Agins Kodek. So I think zoning policy will serve us maybe for the next about 30 or 50 years. But as we go beyond that, we may need to adopt a new tool for development control, which is common in cities that have been over 100 years and beyond.
Let me shoot, and then we follow up that with Janet, and then you'll just respond to all that. Now, you mentioned something about the planning in Nairobi ranging from the colonial period, and let's credit them. They're the ones who built the drainages in this city and all that. Those have remained like that.
They were building the drainage for themselves. There were 200,000 colonialists.
Today, over 60 years later, have we improved on that? Because we are having buildings going up. Governor Sakaja said the only way we can grow is going up. But are we equally, as we go up, population pressure in Nairobi, are we increasing the drainage that is there? If not, why? And as well, now there are buildings that in this city that are not in good conditions. They are cracking left, right, and center. What are you doing to that and the people who are living there in terms of evacuations? And as well, there are those who are going up, they're digging and disrupting other buildings on the side. What are we doing as Nairobi County and all the stakeholders in making sure that I don't want to go up, but don't interfere with my structure? Janet.
I don't know whether we give him a chance to speak to those, because I know time is going. In all of these conversations, there's always an element of lack of trust. Now, I know it sounds like I've completely gone and brought in, but these issues tend to be emotive because people do not feel like there is a consistent will for policies and implementation that caters for the public. So what I'm trying to say is everything that CT has asked, that Dennis has asked, everything you've spoken to, which somebody in the comments has said, you tend to articulate these matters really well. Somebody in the comments was like, yeah, you articulate. But there's still a lot of people, did I understand it wrong, that we can have an outsider design the city for us? Somebody else is saying, I'm concerned about informal settlements. Somebody else is saying, why they're not building these tall apartments in areas that still have space, like Karen and Runda. It's how we Kenyans ignore crucial sectors and departments that touch on our sovereignty that baffles me. So all of this to say, if we don't address the growing concern around lack of accountability, lack of trust. Finally, there's a quote here that says, the more corrupt the state, the more numerous the laws.
Okay,
if we can speak to that, but at the end of the day, it's can people really trust that everything we're saying here, that everything you're projecting for February beyond is going to come to be? Otherwise, it just leaves an element of doubt, and I think it allows for the infiltration of the criminals and the overpopulation that we see, because people say nobody's checking anyway.
Yeah, so I think really a good discussion. In terms of accountability, this requirement is not just, something that has to be done because somebody thinks that we must have these plans in place. It's enshrined in the law. County governments under the CIDP are required to annually prepare plans, and one of those plans is the detailed area plans what I would call the district plans. County governments also under the Physical and Land Use Planning Act are required to produce what we call a county spatial plan. And this county spatial plan then is broken down into projects, and those projects are funded. That's now when you customize in the budget. But let me bring another challenge, I think, which is important. That has been one of our greatest challenges, Dennis and Janet. So once we prepare all these programs, they must be funded. For example, let me say, like the 5 plans we prepared, which collapsed when NMS came to an end. The policy that is currently sitting at the assembly, it could not move beyond the comments that were given by the residents. It requires that you have to put in more money in order to do a more detailed public participation process. The law requires, the County Government Act requires that the executive makes the proposal in terms of funding of preparation of plans, Janet. And I really want you to listen to this carefully. Once you make that proposal, you have to submit it to the County Assembly. The County Assembly have powers either to approve or to reject or to vary, to amend. And once they do that, there's nothing you can do as a technical person. They invite you, you'll explain to them that, this is very important. For example, for Kilimani, there's a lot of outcry by the residents. They need this law in place. So kindly, we need this 50 million or 30 million, for example, to prepare the plan. But in their own discussion and their own wisdom, the funds may be moved and reallocated to other programs. For example, building of classrooms or, buying medicine. And there's nothing we can do about it. And that's one of the challenges of a democracy in terms of regulating of development control. So, Janet, I must repeat by saying that it is not that it is if, because that's the issue of the promises I've made, but it's a requirement in law. And actually, somebody can go to court, and there are people who have gone to court to compel county governments to put in place certain legal provisions in terms of land use. I have a record of past efforts that we've put in place to try and have these frameworks. Because in the absent city, it leaves the department at risk, because then you have developments that people go to court to challenge. You have to come forward and explain how was this approved. It is hard pressing sometimes to justify those technical provisions. So the best thing is to need to have a framework in place, and that's an effort we are really trying to put into place. And that goes together, Dennis, with drainage. That, drainage must be provided within a program, and that program is within a plan. Yes, from 1963, there has not been significant expansion of the drainage system of the city of Nairobi, but the population has grown beyond the 200,000 people who were in the city then, and mainly were colonialists. But you'll also see that the area that is most affected with drainage is the area which was set aside for the settlement of the black population. This has to be within these plans that we are talking about. But beyond the plans, even that drainage, expansion, it will be a facade. So you not be connecting, the areas. But the other thing I need to say, Janet, the cities do not flood because there are no drainage systems. Cities flood because of poor drainage systems. But even when they're in place, how do you use them? Drainage systems are not for dumping, illegal dumping of waste. Drainage systems are not for construction of kiosks. Drainage systems are not for, all these things we do in the city, informal, activities. And authorities, of course, the next question you're asking me, why do you allow them? It's done, but you still find political pressure trying to allow, those illegal settlements. So I think even where we've embarked on system improvement, like in Kileleshwa, I'll be inviting you to check your local neighborhood next time you'll be there. We are recarpeting the roads. City said that the two of you stay in that area of the city. After Kileleshwa, we'll be going to Kilimani. They'll be recarpeting on the roads, Dennis and City. But I think when you wake up on Sunday morning, that green paper bag of garbage having been dumped on some roads on a road in Kileleshwa is not really welcoming to the county government of the city.
The thing that I think...
But for excavation, City, as I conclude, for excavation sites, which is one of the complaints, by the private developers. Excavation is a technical area, Dennis. It is defined in the building code, how to excavate within your beacons. The areas where you're allowed to excavate, beacon to beacon. The areas where you're allowed to excavate, beacon to beacon, but you have an engineering intervention to make sure you protect the structure of your neighbor. But what you're having is that we're having people who have no technical competence going to sites, trying to appear to like they can be the ones to guide contractors or developers. That's where the confusion is coming in. So I think this development control policy is going to really be very explicit. We are going to break down the nitty-gritty so that even neighbors can get to know city.
Yeah. Our assembly
yes.
Are not well informed about these things, and yet they make decisions that are life-changing. Nairobi, as it exists as a county, will continue having these problems until the day we create those boroughs that we were supposed to create and make them autonomous. Because those units will then be able... There's a rationality to how they will function. We outgrew this model that we are now using a long time ago, just given the population of this particular city. How do you expect to manage God knows how many millions of people with the current structure that we have?
The current system obviously is not efficient in managing, and things are even likely to get more challenging because it's projected by 2030 the population will hit about 9 million. And that's why for us, from where we sit, we are really advocating for a borough system of management where you have a manager who has autonomy in terms of making certain decisions, of course, with a very strong public participation mechanism. So that we will not be having these cases where we submit plans to county assemblies, they are rejected, we receive the beating from members of the public who, in their opinion, think that we are not doing what is provided for in law.
Yeah, and we're running short of time, but Patrick, Analo, I've just been requested here to tell you that perhaps when you go back to your office and you talk about planning, clubs in residential areas remains being a problem for many. And here as well, someone just texted from around, I think it's Gitanga Road, there is a dump site that is actually called Dandora. Along Gitanga Road that needs to be addressed because it is not only affecting on the quality of health, but the road that the taxpayers have spent, the county government has spent into repairing that road, that dump site is destroying the very same road. So there is nothing much that the county is doing when it comes to repairing this road. And also when you talk about clubs in residential areas, people have right to...
Yes, so can I respond to that very quickly? Yes, Janet?
No, I was just going to say.
So for the clubs, 10
seconds.
10 seconds. 10 seconds. For the clubs, we have a new policy, alcoholic and alcoholic and attendant facilities regulated policy. We've put in our comments as a planning department that we must set distances from residential areas, from educational facilities. That one's passed. We are going to enforce. As concerns the dump site on Gitanga Road, you said it's called Dandora. Or be passing those, those complaints to my colleagues in Environment Department.
Patrick Analo from the Nairobi County Department, Planning Department. Thank you very much, Janet Muga.
Thank you.
Thank you, CT, Dennis. Shout out to Ndu. I hope she gets better. And to Eric, this is one of the best shows in the country. So I'm really honored to have been part of it. Hope to be back soon. Thank you all.
CT?
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.